Greetings, my friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast tonight with Dr. India White. I'm so excited to be here with you live. This is going to be an incredible moment. I hope you guys have had a great day. I hope that you're able to get a lot of work done and you're able to birth some dreams, some ideas, and visions, and that life is working out for you. I hope your grit is serving you well. Use your great resilience in time and make it happen. Today, I want to get right into this very amazing guest here. I don't know if you guys have been following the news, but there's been some concerns regarding education, some concerns regarding just everything going on with our children and their proficiency, their performances. And so, with that said, I want to bring on a guest who can speak for themselves and kind of be a voice for students across this nation. In particular in the state of Florida. So, with that said, I'm going to bring on someone who is going to be a phenomenal political leader one of these days. He is a scholar and he is just a wonderful personal mentee slash friend. So, with that said, I'm going to bring on to the show today Alexander Rivera. Welcome to the show, Alexander. How's it going?
It's going wonderful. Thank you, India, for having me.
It is a high honor. I'm so delighted to have you on the show today. So, Alexander, some people don't know who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a Tampa native, grew up right here in the Tampa Bay region, attended public school here. I love it. Growing up here uh, is really incredible because of such diversity we have, whether you're Cuban, whether you're African American, it's just a mixture of different backgrounds, and having attended different schools throughout the county afforded me the opportunity to kind of work within that ethnic group. And so I'm glad to be here tonight.
Well, again, it's a high honor to have you. And yes, I love Tampa because of that. The diversity is rich and it's very welcoming, and it always has been. And when we talk about diversity, or we talk about just, I guess, how about your experience in school? I wanted to bring you on today to talk about grit. As you know, I believe that grit means great resilience in time, and the more resilience you have over a shorter amount of time, then the more grit you have. So talk to us about how just, being in Tampa, being a student in, you know, Tampa Bay area has affected your ability to have grit as a student. Talk to us about that.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for that excellent question. So, the power of grit for me means having a great deal amount of courage, and having to deal with um, safe neighborhoods, bad neighborhoods. When I was in, excuse me, let me rephrase. When I was in middle school, through my sixth through seventh grade year, I attended a school in Seminole Heights, and it was right around the time that unfortunate events happened in Seminole Heights, and it was not a safe neighborhood. And so, one of the ways that because we would have different backgrounds, but we had people coming in from Grant Park and all over Tampa just about just to attend this school, and it was a performing arts school called Orange Grove. And one of the things that I loved about Orange Grove was the different options that they had for students, because they had drama, they had chorus, they had orchestra. I mean, it was a really amazing school. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I heard about the school in my fifth grade year, I remember telling my mother I would love to take a tour of it someday. And so when I went for orientation, I was drawn back by the first off the history of the place. I mean, it was built, as I think about it, it approached 100 years old this year alone, which is huge. And so
Yes.
being able to attend such a historic school at this, because growing up, I've always wanted to attend Hillsborough High School, although I was not afforded that opportunity because I did
Mhm.
not want to have to, spend 30 minutes in the car just to attend a school that
Right.
looks something out of a movie. But the power of grit for me is having courage and working with others, because if it's people like myself that advocate, and so we need a lot of vocal leaders here in the Tampa Bay area. I mean, we say that we do, but half the times our students are not always being represented in the way that they deserve, like
Right.
whether it's students who are on disability who are being mistreated every day. And so I feel like they need not only a good listener, but they need somebody that they can rely on to be their friend to advocate for them who do not have a voice.
Right. And so, talk to me about that advocacy. How have you been able to be a friend and maybe even help other students cultivate their grit in the classroom or in the learning environment?
So, one of the things that I was able to advocate is by working very closely with our good friend, State Representative Susan Valdez, who actually co sponsored a piece of legislation in House Bill, um, I believe House Bill 19, HB 19, which focuses on students who have IEPs. And
Okay.
as a former IEP student myself, I can say that for a fact that a good percentage of the students here in the county are not being represented in the way that I was represented, meaning
Right.
that they are not getting the same exact accommodations as I received when I was in
Mhm.
public school. And so, what I mean by accommodations, I mean extended time. Sometimes
Yes.
it is the case, sometimes it isn't. And I remember one time me having to take the PSATs, and I was supposed to be in the extended time room, and they accidentally put me in a room where I would not get the extended time, and so I only had.
Uh-oh.
And so that's exactly what I said to the teacher. I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna. Is there a way that you can maybe try to
Violation of
make
the
these
law, isn't it?
manager?"
Yeah.
So I was like, I need my accommodations. And so for my SAT, they were very understandable. And so they put me in a room, and it's a very long exam. It's 4.5 hours. And so I was like, oh my gosh. I said, literally about 45 minutes in, I literally wanted to tell my teacher, okay, this is a lot, but it's
Yeah.
what you need to go to college. And so
Right.
there are a lot of times where our students are not being represented or not being advocated for. And so by me stepping in, I think that having a voice for all, whether it be public education or something along those lines, to help our students become successful.
I love that. Now, tell me about how you're going to use grit to do that. So, I love your spirit. I like how you have always been very confident and you have been a student leader. You have chosen to think outside of the box and act beyond what the average student has done to advocate for students. So, I know that takes a lot of grit. So,
Hmm.
with that said, what are your plans regarding using grit and harnessing your grit to help make things happen for students that don't have these IEPs or don't have accommodations or they're not getting the services that they need? How do you plan on using grit in your future to help make these accommodations and these services happen for other students?
Well, thank you again for that excellent question. And so, to be an advocate, first of all, you have to be understanding. You have to
Right.
understand that you're coming from, um, different viewpoints, whether it's not in particularly your political group, but your ethnic background. And when I came to my middle school, I attended two middle schools in my lifetime, but while I was there in my eighth grade year is when COVID happened, and so we did not know
Mm.
the direction to take, and so
Right.
it was either the choice of doing remote, or you can go back to brick and
Mhm.
mortar. If you remember, the school board voted on that
I remember.
back in August of 2021, and so one of the things that I, to be honest with you, I was practically, and I said this back when we hosted the uh, the real talk show, is that I said that I was basically confined to the box, meaning you couldn't leave home. You were stuck
I
in
remember.
an office 8 hours a day, stuck in Zoom meetings with your teachers. And so one of the ways that I actually told one of my teachers, I said, gee, I said, I wonder what would happen if I was to advocate for other students. And so I was able to join a club called Best Buddies, which is an excellent group, which
Hmm.
with students who have intellectual disabilities such as Down syndrome, autism. And so when I attended the first club meeting, I remember one of them saying, "Would you like to be my friend?" And that really um, set an all-time high for me, because as somebody who has a disability myself, who has Asperger's and autism spectrum disorder, it is something that I'm very, very proud of. Is that I love advocating for pretty much anything, whether it's gender equality, women's rights. I call myself a feminist because I believe women have the same rights as men do. Um, and so by having grit or excuse me, having courage. And I use that term courage because it takes courage to be an advocate. I mean, there are some who say that they're activists, but don't have the capabilities of being inside of a school board meeting. And I remember
Mm,
attending my first school board meeting at the age of, I want to say, maybe 8 or 9 years old, when Representative, then school board member Valdez, was on the board. And I made a promise to her, and I told her that an education can never be erased, and that I swore my pinky to always stay in school. And so from that day on, I was like, okay, if by raising my pinky, saying that I'm going to stay in school, that means that I'm not only going to stay in school, but I'm going to advocate for those who do not have a voice, that I'm going to stand up to the bullies. And as a matter of fact,
mm.
recently, my former high school that I was at, they put together an anti-bullying task force. So what that would do is that if a student was being bullied, then they can reach out to one of the members on the board, and they would tell, not the school board, but the board of anti-bullying, and they would be able to tell them what's going on, and it's run by the administration. Unfortunately, it did not seek approval from the principal, so it had no choice but to end. But it was a great chapter that we started, and so that's what Grit means to me, is to have a great deal amount of courage.
Wow. So you've mentioned so many different things that you were kind of involved in and whatnot, and how you've been able to, promise to stay in school and use your grit to do that and to advocate for other students. Um, so I wanted to bring up some things that I kind of I just want to just have you talk about some issues here. The
Mhm.
scores have decreased overall in social studies and in civics, and this actually made some national headlines. And so I kind of wanted to see if you could kind of speak to us as a student, what you think your opinion is. Like, why aren't students being able to persist to proficiency and towards academic success in civics or social studies classes? What's going on?
Well, I think first and foremost, they're not getting, I wouldn't say essentially extended time. They are not, they do not have the tools necessary to become successful once they're at
Mm.
home.
Well, give an
So,
example of that. I mean, have you taken any of these civics or social
mhm,
studies classes? So
seventh grade
what
year.
do you think what do you wish teachers leaders that are overseeing these courses, what do you wish they would implement or add or contribute to these courses so that students can be more successful and have higher scores on these exams?
Well, I think first and foremost, civics, after all, is the study of government. And so it teaches them, to learn about, the functions of government. And so one of the things that Representative Valdez had done was do a bill writing contest, which is where it allows the student to focus on a bill, not from the Florida House of Representatives, but what they
Mhm.
believe that is important to Floridians.
Right,
So
just in
whether
general.
it so whether it be if it's issues on less homework policies or something along those lines. And as a matter of fact, there was a either a middle school or a high school that she visited, and that they did a bill writing contest, and one of their bills actually ended up getting passed and signed by the governor.
Awesome.
Oh, and so one of the things that I think is important is that what I mean by students do not have the appropriate accommodations, I mean they're not getting internet at home, or they're on low income
Mm,
and cannot afford a hotspot
wow.
to to get access to this. And the way that I know this
Wow.
is because I had a friend of mine who lived in a poor side of town, whose family was struggling. His mom was a single mom, had 5 kids
Mm,
under one roof, barely able to pay the bills. And so I said, I'm going to put you in touch with Metropolitan Ministries and see if they can help you. And so they were able to get a Wi-Fi grant, which is where they were able to come down, which is sponsored by Spectrum. They were
mhm.
able to come to their home, assess them,
Wow.
give them internet so he can do virtual learning. And as a matter of fact, he
Yeah,
told me that since then his mom got a job and is able to help out, and he's able
excellent.
to take care of his siblings while his mom is working.
Mhm. How
Going
old
to
is
full,
he?
he is now 14 years old, but when he told me this, he was 12.
How old is his
And
siblings? Do you know? Were they younger,
uh,
older?
well, they were. much younger. I believe the youngest was about, um, I believe he, I believe he said was 3.5 years old, and so
I'm going to stop you
having
right there. You know, I'm thankful for your transparency. Hold that thought. To the listeners, consider the situation. I'm sure this child is not the only person that is taking care of siblings at home, but yet are expected to study for these different types of tests and have access. As you heard in this example, this child is alone with the children because mom's got to do what mom's got to do. Mom has to work. Shout out to single mothers out there doing their best. And you got to look at the big picture here. This child is trying to juggle taking care of four siblings, plus homework, plus a lack of internet access, plus coming back from the COVID slide. Um, all of these factors are contributing to why students across the nation are not making proficient scores and gains in the area of civics. Yes, some are. There are pockets here and there, excellent. But you have situations like this where we look at the test and we say, what's going on? Well, we have to start considering the home environment. We have to start considering the resources, different practices that are taking place that would make instruction equitable and accessible for all students. And unfortunately, in this situation, this child is overwhelmed. How did this child persist through grit? I mean, were you able to maybe have a conversation with them? What were Tell us about that? What was that like?
so when first off, I was very, very moved, and as somebody who did grow up, um, I grew up in Brandon, and so my mom was a single mom. By the time I turned the age of 2, and so her youngest was 3.5, and I was the youngest, and so it was hard on her. Plus, she was putting my older brother, who's now 33, going to be 34, through high school, and as you can imagine, being a single mom is nowhere near easy. I mean, you're struggling to pay the
I know.
bills, and I told um I told him everything's gonna be okay. I said I'm gonna put you in contact with one of my good friends who actually works at Metropolitan Ministries. And I remember he came to my lunch and he was like, I'm able to finally have Wi-Fi to turn in assignments. And so, as
Wow.
somebody who understands what he went through and has
Ah,
been in his shoes, I could I could never turn him away. I mean, I was absolutely remorseful that he was going through, horrible things.
that's tough. And then how did that affect you as a student? Because I know,
It had a great deal of impact because as somebody who was in his shoes,
yeah,
um it was hard. Literally, I remember going home crying myself to sleep that night, thinking, "Oh my God, is he going to be okay to come to school the next day?" And then he had told me
yeah,
that his um his family was so poor that he could not even have running water to get anything to drink. And so I was like, okay, there's got to be. So I stepped in at that point. I'm like, okay, I'm going to help you out. And so I put him in contact with my church, and they were able to pay his water bill as well as his electric bill,
beautiful.
to the
Question:
point. Mhm.
were you able to notify school leaders so that the school could also give supports for this child? I mean, I'm just moved by this because this is the story of thousands of students across our nation, if
Mhm.
not hundreds of thousands. And so many times we give them a textbook, we give them a computer at school, and then we say, okay, we're expecting you to be on the same level as people that have two parents in the home, making six figures, doing their, just everything great, money in the bank. We're expecting this child over here that has nothing or close to nothing, that is struggling in a single parent home. Kudos to that mom for doing the best that she could, right? But
Mhm.
we're expecting both of these children to perform at the same level, or, to both score proficient,
Mhm.
scores. Um, but we're missing the elephant in the room, which is the trauma and the lack of
Mhm.
resources and access for these students. So, were you able to contact or notify school administration, school leaders at all? Administrators can't do it all, but they can at least try to point and maneuver and do some things. Tell us about that part of the journey.
So I did reach out to a really good friend of mine, who's an advocate, who's much more higher than I am when it comes to education. And so and it wasn't the superintendent nor it was the school board, but it was my former AP who's now retired. And I told her, I said, I feel so bad for this one particular student, and she told me what was going on, and I had relayed it over to her. At that point, me and her both, agreed that we were willing to help him. And as a matter of fact, I'm so, excuse me, so blessed that I was able to locate and find somebody just in the nick of time. And so she told me to call, um, first contact my church, because churches love helping out through food pantries. And so I contacted my church and I told them what was going on, how I had a student who didn't have any Wi-Fi, nor did he have broadband, nor even running water. And so they came to his home, and then they gave his mother a $50 Publix gift card so she can go down to Publix and feed her kids, get them something to eat, or come home with a bag of groceries. And so it's one of the hardest parts is that when you have a student who who literally cried at the lunch table, you know, basically, and it broke me. It really did, because
Yeah.
it try
And
not
then
to get
it's
emotional on this podcast, but no, I'm good, Liz.
and
My sister is in the background and she's listening to the story. Um, yeah, my sister's asking me for iced tea,
oh,
but
sorry. Okay.
so I was very very upset in what was going on, and so I was like, you know what, there's got to be somebody who in the school system has got to care for these kids. So it's like, okay, I can deal with it. So I reached out to my good friend, um, who is who's a community outreach sponsor. And so what her job is that she goes out into the community, particularly the low parts of Hillsborough County, and she's able to talk to them, or excuse me, communicate to the parent or the person or the individual who's in need of services. And so what I was able to do is I went with her over the summer, and the families that we witnessed was gut wrenching. I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a giant food pantry right before school starts. That way they can have as many food as they want, because after all, it is coming from Feeding Tampa Bay. So I partnered with Feeding Tampa Bay, and we fed over 2,000 families during the
Beautiful.
summer.
Beautiful. See, that's grit. That was
Having
grit.
courage.
You,
And that's
I
the
mean,
term that I use.
and the thing is, you could have easily said, well, that's his problem. That's their problem. You could have
Right.
turned an eye towards it. But I want you to know that I'm very proud of you, and I'm thankful for you that you had a heart to do that, that you had a heart to care enough for your friend. And I think that, when you look back on that situation and you see them grow up and to be, a successful person in society, you'll have a little piece of that. So that is
Mm-hmm.
something that no one could take away from you. And I'm very
Right.
proud of you. Thank you for having a heart to care for people. And I pray that you go as far as you can go, and
Right.
continue to make a difference. Keep a good heart, no matter what you do, Alexander. Keep a good heart, honey. It's all about keeping a good heart towards people, because
Right.
we really don't know how long we have in this earth. We don't know. All we know is, how do we make people feel? How can we help people? How can we be a blessing to people? How can we love others? And you've got that part. And that's beautiful. Don't ever let anyone tarnish that. Don't let anyone take that from you. So, with that, continue to keep grit and go. Let's continue to talk now. I'm going to talk now with you about dropout rates. What can we do? Um, what can we do with this? Dropout rates have unfortunately increased. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they've increased since the pandemic, definitely. Uh, what do you think's going on in schools? You're a high schooler, right? Talk to us
Mm-hmm.
about your experience and what are we missing? Is it teachers? Is it administration? Is it the timing? Is it the curriculum? What is it?
Well, first and foremost, that's a really excellent question, and it's a funny thing. Well, it's not really a funny thing, but it's also very important that you bring that up, because a lot of times the dropout rates are as a result of. I remember my mother being in high school and she was 16 years old and pregnant with my brother, and so a lot of times there's a not only an increase in dropout rates, but also an increase in teenage pregnancy. and it's at an
Mm,
all-time
there's a
high.
correlation. Mm-hmm.
And so, as somebody who actually had to leave high school because of medical reasons, it was especially hard on my part because of me having to leave a school that I've only known for 2.5 years because of my illness. And so it was very bittersweet, which happened over 2 weeks ago. But as I reflect, my sister uh, was so close to finishing and just was like, you know what? She threw her hands in the air and she was like, I quit. I said, let me tell you something, Liz. I said, don't ever quit. I said, because if you quit, I said what's gonna happen is it's gonna give one people more power to think that they can control you when they can't.
Mm.
I said the dropout rates here in Ellsworth County are astounding. I mean, we have kids as young as 16 dropping out of high school. And so it's something that not only for me to take seriously, but also, the people throughout the county. And I've had reasonable explanations with the school board as to why we're having dropout rates, especially as young as 16 dropping out. And so one of the bills that was recently passed and something that is still being concordant here in the Hillsborough County system is the certificate of completion.
Okay,
It's
explain what that is for the audience, for those that might not know.
okay. So the certificate of completion, y'all, is essentially where uh, I wish Representative Valdez would be on this call because she would know more about it than I would. But she did tell me that it is a certificate that you can get that says that you at least attended high school. But here's the dealio with the certificate of completion: you can't go to college, nor you, and I don't believe you can barely work at McDonald's, let alone
You
work
can't get a job with a
a
certificate of.
certificate of completion, unfortunately. And so, one of the things that I was able to work with is that I actually had friends of mine who actually did drop out because they were, pregnant and could not go to school. And so my cousin and I said, boy, I said, gee, I said, it's not your fault that you're pregnant. I said, I completely have absolute every single sympathy for you. I said, but we got to do something. I said, it's only a matter of time before we're running out of options here. I said, because, you're going to be, she sounded 26. And I told her, I said, you're going to be 27 in February. I said, just at least go to an adult school and at least get your GED or your high school diploma. And so that is what I am full on considering come August because of the fact that um, they t- and I remember my guidance counselor telling me about 2 days before I withdrew, she's like, I want you to go over there to make up credits. Now, the reason why credits are so low is because of the fact that teachers are not teaching the curriculum that they should be teaching. Like, we had a teacher who was being investigated for anti Semitism. And so it was not my teacher, but it impacted our school so much and had allegations to the point of going back to 1998. So it was pretty huge. And so I told my teachers, I said, I need extended time on assignments. I need to be able to understand, this is what I have to do. And they would not clarify, okay, this is what you have to do. This is what time it's due. I'm like, then why bother, me trying if they're not going to help me out?
Did they communicate with your parent or guardian?
They communicated they communicated it to my parent, and they basically told them that there was nothing that they can do, that I should go ahead and withdraw. And it was the same excuse that they used in my sophomore year. And so now, having attended the same school for the past 2 years, and both of them having to turn me away because they said that I didn't do anything, when in actuality I worked my tail off to do what I had to do, which was to um, kind of pull it up by its bootstraps. And what I mean by pull it up by its bootstraps, I mean being able to go um, into the school, being able to understand, okay, this is what I have to do. This is what it's this is what is expected, but they did not clarify, like, okay, this is the assignment. I mean, some of them did, but they like who like my chemistry chemistry teacher in particular, she was like, "Oh, I need you to memorize the entire periodic table in 2 weeks, and I want you to memorize them in their atomic number." For a, and I don't know if that's one of her teaching methods, but I simply told her, I said, there is no way on God's green earth that somebody is able to draw the periodic table and memorize it no later than Thursday of next week, let alone 2 weeks.
So, okay, so were you able to have a conversation with your guidance counselors regarding
Yes.
what you needed to do? I know you were
Mm-hmm.
gritty with all of this. What was that conversation like? Was there hope there that you could push through?
The,
Was it too far behind? What were they saying?
my guidance counselor basically told me that I was lazy, that I practically did absolutely nothing. When in actuality, I was working my tail off. Half the days that I was out was because my mental health is so bad, and I'm gonna be straightforward. I do have major depressive disorder, and so it made it an incapability of me being able to learn, and so it was hard on me because
But
first
wait,
and foremost.
do
Go
you
ahead.
have an IEP though?
Hmm.
So then they weren't able to work around your
So
situation. To provide
the
those services.
only thing that they were able to do on my behalf was give me extended time and to make sure that assignments are completed when done. And so the problem was is that they basically said that I did not turn assignments in, when in actuality I turned my assignments in almost every single week, had them due maybe about at least 3 days before the due date. And to be honest with you, the standards here in Florida, I mean, they're taking away, I mean, particularly in history, they're teaching kids to learn about the civil rights movement, but yet in in one of the bills that was passed last legislative session was to eliminate critical race theory, which includes segregation, the civil rights movement, slavery. And so it made me feel like, then why are we bothered learning it if they're gonna, violate the law?
Well, I will say this. Even though I won't really touch on this too much. Critical race theory is not really mentioned in grades K 12. That is higher education. So basically, that should not have had any relevance to your particular learning experience. That is definitely something that people take in graduate school, and they take it by choice. They take it because they're going to become experts in some kind of historical situation. But it should not have been anything that was pertinent or relevant to your particular educational experience. So
Mhm.
um, I think that, just my biggest concern here is, if you have, different things in place by law and IP, things like that, and you were gritty, um, th- I just question uh, where was the ball dropped regarding following up with you, communicating with you and family to figure out what they needed to do to make you successful. But you did tell me that you had plans to possibly re-enroll, correct?
Yes, so that is the plan. The plan is for me to sometime during the summer, they're working with my sister currently to, have her test out for the GED, which is great. I have no problem with that. This school is where my mom went and actually graduated, and actually were able to give her a full ride grant to go to a
Awesome.
university for her to get her excuse me, her associate's degree in medicine. And, because of it, she's now with CMA. Um,
Congrats to her.
And so she's like, and my mom was a single mom, for a good percentage of her life. And when she met my father, he was never helpful. And so she was basically struggling. So she did not go to high school until she was about 45. But it is an adult school, so you can pretty much enroll at any age.
But that's
And
grit, right?
and so she had
Sometimes,
courage. She was
yeah.
like, if I can do it, she goes, if I can be 45 years old and being able to get my high school diploma, she goes, then why can't you? She goes, I have grit. And I'm like, Mom, did you really just use that term? And she watches this podcast all the time. And I actually got her to start watching it and listening to the different leaders. And she's like, India's story is really moving because it reminds me of what I went through when I was her age. And so I said to my mom, I said, Mom, I said, I don't know how you did it. I said, both of you guys are my heroes. You guys are incredible. guys
Mm,
advocate on behalf. And as a matter of fact, I told my mom, I said, Mom, it's going to come sooner or later that you're going to thank me later when I'm running for governor and you're going to be my running mate. She goes, yeah.
that's right.
She goes, who wants an 80-year-old running for president of the United States? But
I love that. I like your vision, and don't give up that dream. If you want to be governor, go for it. Make plans. There's always more than one option to your
mhm,
road of success. So keep that in mind as well. There's always one more than one way.
mhm,
Whenever you're going to say you're going to travel somewhere,
mhm,
Busch Gardens or going to university or going out of town, going to the beach, sometimes the road that you wanted to take uh, it's under construction or something
mhm,
happened and you're not able to access that road
yep,
to get to your destination as fast as you wanted to. However, there's always a detour. You can always take the back road. You can always do something and loop around, right? So with that,
mhm,
that's the same thing with your success. Okay. You might not have had it painted for you the way you desired, as far
mhm,
as, okay, I'm going to go to this school and do the traditional route. That doesn't mean that you still cannot achieve success. There's
right,
always more than one way to being successful and to achieving your goals. Remember that no matter what, your mom's showing you, so many people on the show has showed you, and I pray that, others, including myself and our tribe, has shown you and has been kind of a voice of hope for you. So with that said, I want to now ask you a question, and I want you to take this question with you.
hang
Um,
on 1 second, India. I
yeah,
just have to go let my dog in.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm going to talk with him about this detouring and roads to success. And I say this because Alexander has talked about some things that has been kind of moving regarding what students are going through in the education system. Sometimes our students are coming to us with different issues, and this is why it's imperative that educators and leaders have a sense of empathy and understand their students, understand what they're going through, understand how to help students detour to their success. Students, they might not be able to be your typical traditional student, but that does not mean that they still can't be successful and that they cannot obtain, either a diploma or some other type of route towards success. This is why we're constantly pushing towards college and career readiness. Do these students need, maybe the student that can't finish, a traditional path of high school? Do they need certifications, technical, supports? What do they need to make sure that they are set up for success in life? This is why I love the motto, preparing students for life, because we understand it's bigger than just getting a high school diploma. It's, can that student survive? Can that student contribute to society as a responsible adult, a responsible citizen? Can this student, leave behind a legacy? Can the student pioneer some things and do some things beautiful? So, in this situation, I want to also think about, how do we use grit to thrive through hopelessness? So I'm going to bring Alexander back on, and I want him to kind of talk to us about that. Um, what do you think about this? I think you're muted. How do you use grit to thrive through hopelessness, Alexander? You've had a couple of hopeless situations. How have you been able to use grit to move forward?
Well, I think the way that I use courage through hopelessness is first and foremost by keeping my head held high. I mean, I usually find either a podcast on Spotify or a song that I love, particularly Bonnie Tyler, which is one of my favorite bands of all time. And so the way that I use hope, well, the way that I use courage is by talking to a trusted person that I trust. So if it's a mentor that I work with, or if it's one of my colleagues that I work with in particular, such as my amazing friend Susan Valdez, who we talk on a regular basis. Um, and she tells me about stuff all the time, what's going on in Tallahassee. And, sometimes I'm not always there to witness the debates firsthand, but I do watch it from time to time if I do have the time to actually watch the Florida channel. Another is by going to therapy. For me, my
Yes.
therapy is painting, cooking, going to my therapist, and
Beautiful.
having positive energy.
Yes, I love that. I'm so happy you mentioned that. When you are dealing with tough times and things that happen unbeknownst to you, situations, obstacles that are beyond your control, therapy is a beautiful way of having an outlet and having someone to help you with the trajectory of your life to really kind of clear the path for you so that you see that it really isn't hopeless and that there is another way. So, I'm so happy that you brought that up. And so I want to now ask you, Alexander, another question.
Hmm.
When it comes down to utilizing grit for your success as a student,
Mm.
what advice would you give to your listeners?
Well, the advice that I would give you is very, very straightforward. Always, my tips for success is be a good listener, because you can't get anywhere if you don't listen. I mean, if you're not listening, then like for example, if a school official is coming to your school and they ask you what is the lesson you're learning, and you're not able to give them an answer, that's gonna
Mhm.
not only make them look bad, but it's also going to make the teacher look bad as to, okay, I went to college, I am certified, and they said that they're not learning what I'm teaching them. And so that happens on a regular basis. And so, as a matter of fact, the way that I use success is by taking notes. Like whenever I'm being interviewed, the first thing I do is that I have a little notepad over here. So the first thing I do is I take notes as to what the question is, what the meaning is behind it, give my response, and then basically change things up, or spice things up is the appropriate term to use. But when I think of success, the first thing that I think of is taking notes, being accountable. For example, if you have a job, you don't want to show up an hour late before your job. You want to be there on time, or kind of do the
That's good.
appropriate thing to do.
Right. And I like that. And you're talking about jobs. So, have
Mhm.
you ever had a professional time that you've had to use grit?
Yes, as a matter of fact, one of the ways that I actually used grit in my profession is by speaking up for those who don't have a voice. And so, one of the ways that I was able to do that is that I was able to socialize with my friends, and as I mentioned earlier, and I told the story about the boy who did not have the appropriate accommodations.
Right.
I think by using that and advocating for those that who do not have a voice here in Hillsborough County, it's very, very important. People think that it's that person's lazy, they do not have the appropriate supplies, and one of the other friends of mine who also comes from a low income family did not even have school supplies, nor did he have a pencil to write with. He basically had
Wow.
to use a crayon. And so I was like, okay, there's got to be something
Wow.
that I can do. So, me being the bigger person, there's a lot of really great resources here in Tampa Bay. I know the Hillsborough County Education Foundation, for one. They have a
Yes.
teacher supply store
Hmm.
over the off of Howard. And so
Which
I told one of my
that helped
teachers,
me when I was an educator. Thank you, Hillsborough Education Foundation, because they
yes,
were good to me when I was an educator and I needed those extra pencils for my
right.
babies.
And
So,
we can
yeah.
never forget donors choose. We can
Yes,
never
yes.
forget that. And
Grants from Donors Choose is wonderful.
And
Beautiful.
so, well, one of the things that I was able to do is that I partnered with Donors Choose, and we were able to get the student what he needed. And he actually sent over a supply list of what he needed for class. And so, they were also able to supply him with a Chromebook, so he was able to work not only in the classroom but also to work from home. And so I told him, I
Okay.
said, I told you, I have your back. I said, I'm not afraid to put somebody in their place if they're not doing it right. I said, because my teacher would stereotype this person and literally say, "Oh, you're stupid. You don't have the accommodations," and would
Mhm.
basically make fun of him. And I used to tell her all the time. I said, by making fun of somebody, that's
Mhm.
not. It's not cute. I said, you
Yeah.
think it's all fun and games. I said, let me tell you something. I said, I grew up in a low income family. I said, had it not would have been either for Donors Choose or Hillsborough County Public Schools, I would not be sitting in this seat telling you about what goes on. I said, you don't know how many families out there in Hillsborough County, let alone thousands, who are without power, who do not have internet, who don't even have running water to even get something to drink. I said, it's very, very serious. And by you poking fun at somebody, that's going to make them lose hope, but it's not going to make them give up.
And I think this is imperative to continue to have conversations like this so that we can
Mm-hmm.
build a culture of grit in our communities where we are doing acts of service like yourself and like Honorable Valdez has done as well, where people are going
Mm-hmm.
in and intentionally giving back and serving the community in the ways that they
Mm-hmm.
need it, whether that's through providing food or school supplies or health fairs. So I think this is beautiful, what you're speaking about. So,
Now, in connection to the health fair, if I may add to that,
sure.
every year, Representative Susan Valdez, for those of you who don't know who Representative Valdez is, she is a member of the Florida State Legislature. She's a former school board member here in Hillsborough County. But that woman, let me tell you what, she definitely has grit. She's able
Oh,
to,
yes.
like, literally, people don't say
Yes.
she has grit. You must be out your head. But
Yes.
that woman is the strongest mentor that I've ever known.
Beautiful.
And she's also my godmother. So I was able to communicate over to her. Um, and every year, right before school starts, it's usually the weekend after the first day of school or somewhere in between, she does a back to school health fair. So that includes immunizations, that includes school supplies, and she does it mostly either at Lato High School, which is her alma mater. Go Falcons. Um,
Go Falcons.
and so one of the things that one of my friends told me is, um, and as a matter of fact, I spoke to her this morning, and she's like, "Good luck on your interview tonight." I said, "Well, I know for a fact it's not CNN, but one thing I can tell you is that the one of the things that I love about Dr. White is her ability to mentor and to be a coach to people like myself, and to spread all kinds of grit throughout the country. I mean, you're all over the place. You're in Hawaii, you're in LA. I mean, you're just phenomenal. And I look up to you as a personal mentor. And without you, I would not be where I am today. So thank you, India.
You're amazing. And, I'm just thankful to have a little print in your heart. And I'm telling you, no matter what you do in this life, whether it's governor, senator, president, whatever you decide to
I
do,
think it's all of that.
yes, whatever, because you're going to be awesome. You're a rock star, right? So,
Yes.
whatever you do, keep your heart right.
Mm-hmm.
If you can keep your heart right, everything will match up for you. Let
Mm-hmm.
everything else work out. Your battles will be fought. The people that you need will come to you, and you will love your life. You will be able to sleep at night. You won't have thoughts of regret. You won't have loads of guilt because your heart will be right. So whatever you do, if I can give you advice, it would be say yes, take your grit and go, but make sure your heart is right.
Yep.
Make sure your heart is right. So I am very proud of you, Alexander, and I'm here for you, sweetie. And you have a host of people that are lined up to support you. I'm telling you, you have a rich clientele of people that are here to go to bat for you.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, thank you for coming on the show and being a voice for students. Do you have one last thing to say for our audience, as a representative here on the Let's Get Gritty podcast?
Absolutely. And that is, do whatever your heart desires. If you are feeling like you can't do anything, that is not true. You can put your mind to anything. You just got to have the courage and the grit to do it.
Right. It's beautiful. And I like that advice. So with that said, thank you so much, Alexander, for joining me today on the Let's Get Gritty podcast. For you guys, thank you for joining the podcast again. It's always fun. I'm so happy I was able to get on here and just to be a blessing to you guys and love on y'all for a minute. Of course, I'm going to give you a couple of announcements. The Let's Get Gritty podcast will be featured on Swain Girl Media channel. Thank you, Precious, for that amazing opportunity. And if you want to follow me on social media, you've got LinkedIn is the India White, Facebook is Miss India White, Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach, Instagram is Indie238, and YouTube is India White 123. Thank you for those that have followed, that have supported, that have liked and shared, that have been able to send me awesome DM messages of encouragement, of prayers, of supports, of opportunities. Thank you. I'm so thankful and I feel so blessed to connect with each of you. Also, feel free to check out my website. I've been writing blogs on various educational things, so check me out, please. And I also have some books available. My Equity Counts book. I have my Success for All book, which Alexander, I think you said you um, might have
Yes.
gotten a copy of that, right? The Success for All
Yeah, it's
book.
somewhere in the
Great.
house.
Yeah, it's
It's
somewhere. It's
probably in
somewhere.
my
But listen,
library.
guys, this is one of the most valuable things I have really shared. It really is my heart, and it's actually really convenient, and it's really affordable. You could find it on Amazon. Success for All. So check it out when you get a chance, and of course, feel free to just keep me posted on any opportunities that you have if you need me to come speak, do professional development, or anything else like that. Now, Alexander,
Yes.
however, what is your information for those that are wanting to reach you on social media?
All right, that's what I'm about to do in the chat. So just give me a second
Okay,
while
so
I've done that.
Alexander's going to share with us how we can reach him as well. And then we are going to continue going on and being great together, guys. So um, Alexander's going to provide his email and some other things for us
Hmm.
to see if you guys want to reach out to him, if you need him to come on and either advocate for students or to share his experience, to share his story. He would be more than honored to join you guys at that. So, again, Alexander, I'm so proud of you, and I'm proud of the leaders that have been helping you in the region in Hillsborough County and whatnot.
Hmm.
And, as you know, we're here for you. So, you could just say it out loud and then oh,
Okay.
okay, here it is in the chat. One second. Beautiful. I'm going to post this for you guys. Um, how we can reach Alexander. So here's his information for LinkedIn. It's Alex B. Rivera. Are we connected on LinkedIn?
I believe so. And
Okay.
oh, for the Twitter, let me
Yeah.
rephrase. That's actually real Alex P. Rivera. I'm like,
Okay.
hi.
Real. Okay. So real in front for Twitter. So
Yeah, I'm about to type
real
it in the chat.
Alex B. Rivera. Okay. And then there's his email, alexander.rivera02@icloud.com. His phone number is there, which please be respectful since Alexander is still a student. Um, please, I am a mama bear about stuff like that. He's giving his information. Please do not violate his personal time or the hours that he's put on here. If you do, we will come for you and it won't be good. So please
Yeah, it will
respect
be
that.
like it'll be
And
like ball and chain. Let's go.
we will come for you
I'm
because
just
I'm a
joking
mama
about the
bear
ball and chain.
when it comes down to students. I'm a mama bear. I don't play about things like that. So
Hmm.
thanks, Alexander, for sharing this information, sweetheart. And with
Yep.
that said, you guys have a phenomenal night. Thank you so much again for joining us on the Let's Get Gritty
Thank you.
podcast. And until next time, take care. See ya.